What's up, everybody? I'm Michael.
And I'm Amanda.
And today we're going to have a candid hangout conversation about the art of conversation.
I think that this is going to be great for those of you who are dating, those of you who are building new friendships, and for those of you who are married. It's great for everyone in different contexts. So if you're married, you want to know how to connect with your spouse. If you're dating, you want to know how to have conversation on that first date. And if you're building friendships, it's just like, hey, you have to start from somewhere. You have to start with conversation. So what are some things that you believe make for a good combo?
I think that it's important for people to be genuinely interested in the other person. Like I was talking to someone recently and they said, Michael, what I like about you is that you're curious and that you're not listening to respond, you're listening to understand. And that's something that we've heard before. Many of us have heard before that's not some like new revolutionary like concept, but I think that when people feel like you care about them and you're asking questions about them and their lives, not only are they more likely to open up, but they are more likely to feel good about themselves, right? Yeah. Like everybody's favorite thing to talk about is themselves.
That's real.
And so people may care about you, but they care about themselves more.
Accurate.
So if you are good at conversation, asking questions and being engaging, but the other person isn't, it could actually be very frustrating because you feel like instead of playing, tennis or ping pong where you're going back and forth, feels like you're throwing goop at a wall and it's going splat. You know what I mean? So that's kind of my perspective. What do you think?
I agree. You can always tell when the conversation is one-sided when it's like a big, long monologue.
Yeah.
Like where you're talking at one another instead of talking with one another. And this just happens, I think the phenomenon happens because of, I think social media has had a huge part to play in it.
Okay.
Because everybody has their own platform, everybody has their own spotlight, and we're used to just telling.
Yeah.
And because we're used to just telling our story, telling our status, we're in this weird place where we think that that's normal. And so what we do is we sit over coffee and we're just like, blah.
Let me tell.
And we just like word vomit all over the other person, telling them about our lives, questions they didn't even ask us, things they don't even care about. And we've lost the art of asking questions. And so a good conversation is question-led. So what are the types of questions that are good to ask during a conversation?
I think that questions, it depends on who you're having a conversation with, right? I mean, having a first date conversation is different than having a marriage conversation, and it's different than having like, a best friend conversation or whatever. And so I think that just asking somebody like, what's new with you? What's going on in your life? Like, tell me about your life. Like, I'm interested in how things are going in a specific area. You could say work, school, whatever. But I mean, just kind of like getting a current events update on an individual can really make them feel good, and then maybe playing off of that.
Yeah, and I think it's also good to know how to relate to maybe a mentee or someone who mentors you, because I feel like sometimes those conversations can have a lot of expectation, like, oh, we're supposed to go deep, but I don't even know how to talk. I have someone who mentors me, and then I mentor many people, and whenever I'm mentoring, I'll ask something like, how is your life? How are you overall, mentally, spiritually, physically, and emotionally? And I mean, that is such a loaded question, and it directs the conversation easily and immediately. And so if you are a leader in any capacity and you're like, what, I want to know about the people that I'm leading and I want to disciple well, or whatever it may be, asking that question can help. How are you spiritually, emotionally, physically, mentally? And mentally? That's really big. And then also, whenever you are a mentee, in relation to a mentor, or maybe it's just somebody who is a boss of yours, somebody who's higher up, it's always good to glean wisdom.
Come on, that's good.
And the thing is, I feel like we are in a world where we want everything, we want everyone to listen to us, but we're not ready to listen. And if you're in a conversation with someone who has any kind of spiritual authority, or maybe just any kind of authority over your life, it's always great to be really question-led with them as well. Like, hey, what's your perspective on blank? Or what would you tell someone who's going through blank? Or have you ever been through blank? How did you deal with it? And what that does is it shows that person that you respect their leadership, you respect their authority, and that you're here to glean. You're not here to be the know-it-all. Nobody likes to be around the know-it-all, right? You're not in relationships with others to just share with them everything that you know.
Right.
But asking questions says, hey, I don't know everything. I want to learn about you. I want to learn about your take on the world, and I'm an open book. And so that's another thing. Everything really stems back to questions.
Yeah, for sure. Are there any other conversation things? There's something that I have in mind that's important with conversation, but I want to know if you have something.
Let me hear it.
I want to so say that last part again that you were talking about with like the boss and the manager and stuff like that.
You don't want to come to anyone as a know-it-all. You want to position yourself to go.
So like, didn't mean to cut you off. And then, like, I keep going. You see what I'm saying?
That's the worst.
Isn't that terrible? And so it's like in a conversation, interrupting and cutting the other person off.
The worst.
Oh my gosh! Whenever like someone does that to me, I literally just like write them off. Like like, oh, this conversation's not even a conversation.
Yeah.
It's like crazy when people are like, sorry, don't mean to cut you off. And it's like, no, you did mean to cut me off.
You definitely meant to.
And that's why you're continuing to, like, cut me off. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I illustrated that because you may not even realize that that's something that you do, but it is just, like, terrible conversation etiquette.
It's the worst. And I think that, are you finished?
Yes. That was a good pause. That was a healthy pause. That was a healthy pause.
So, and I also feel like there are levels to it, because that's one level, what we just did. You know, that's one level. It's one thing to just like start bulldozing over someone and just talking over them, which is the worst of the worst. But there are situations in which I feel like it's appropriate to interject, not interrupt.
Okay.
Yeah, and so...
Okay, tell me about that.
You just did it.
Oh, right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I said interject, not interrupt. Okay, you're not trying to take over the conversation. You're just adding to what I'm doing.
Right.
Not to be confused with finishing someone else's sentence.
Terrible.
Because I feel like it's based on assumption.
Yeah.
You're assuming you know what I'm going to say next. And it'll just be like, don't you just hate it when... And then...
Like, your shoes come in the box with 2 left feet, and it's like, no, that's not where I was going.
No, a different direction.
Yeah.
And that's the worst. Like, don't finish other people's sentences. Don't assume you know where they're going, because it's just not true.
Yeah.
You don't know where they're going. And even if you do, the other person really wants to express themselves.
Yeah.
That happened to us just yesterday.
Really?
Yeah, I wanted to tell you something, and I wanted to show you something online, and you're like, I already know what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
I already know what it looks like. And I'm like, but I want to show you. I'm still going to show you. Still let me talk.
Yeah.
Because whether or not somebody knows where you're going, you want to be able to express yourself. And so don't rob someone else of the opportunity to express themselves.
Yeah, for sure. Any other things, like when it comes to conversation, that it's important that you feel?
Yeah. I feel like when someone's preaching, you got to talk back to them. You got to talk. Hey, they'll say, talk back to me. That's a conversation. You got to say some amen. Don't leave somebody hanging high and dry.
Now you're going to have somebody in some like Catholic Anglican church, like, preach, Tim Keller. Like, what? It's like,
preach, John Piper.
So they're like, what? Ma'am, so
come on, CS.
Come on, we're going to ask you to leave, or, tone it down.
Oh, my goodness.
So I think that's a piece of conversation as well, that some things are contextual.
Contextual and cultural.
That's so true. So true. Anything else you got?
Yeah, there was one other thing I wanted to mention. That's also another really great conversation technique, saying anything else you got or tell me more. Leave some space for someone to talk. Mm-hmm. Because many times what someone says is the surface level, and you can just say, tell me more.
Yeah.
It's a great thing. You get to the deep, deep, deep stuff when you just say, tell me more.
Yeah. And
good stuff.
You also can allow for pauses too. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes people get like about like silence, awkward silences or something like that, but actually many silences aren't as awkward as they feel in the moment. And now, like in that moment, even on camera just now, I would have told Amanda, like, take your time. If there was something that you had take your time. And then after some time, I would actually replay the conversation to see if it like triggered it again. And oftentimes it does.
Yeah, that's a really good one. So actually giving someone else the space to think and not feeling obligated to fill that silence.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was going somewhere with that.
Take your time.
I believe sometimes we'll ask somebody a question and then they're thinking about that question. They're pondering that question. They're like, I need to think about that. And then you'll be like, well, what about this or what about that?
Yeah.
Because you're so uncomfortable with the pauses. But good conversation has really good pauses.
Mm-hmm.
Good conversation gives time to think. And so I think taking a non-hurried approach really makes a big impact. You're not hurrying. You're not rushing to get to the end of what you're saying, or you're not rushing the other person to get to the end of what they're saying so that you can talk. It's patient. Good conversation is patient and it's present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that good conversation in that light really resembles the fruit of the Spirit, right? It's loving, it's patient, it's kind, it's self-controlled,
Yeah.
It's like you just having the fruit of the Spirit and practicing that in your everyday life will flow itself into conversation.
Yeah, and you can't be a conversational narcissist, where you hog the conversation for 15 minutes at a time.
Oh my gosh.
Don't be a conversation hog.
Don't do that.
You can talk for like 3 minutes straight and then you can say, so that's me. What do you think about it? Or what do you have to say about it? If you realize that you've been talking for a long time, do something to pass the ball in their court.
Yeah.
And that's a really good thing. So what are just some questions for people who aren't used to question asking? This is a new concept for them. They're not used to the art of conversation. It's new. What are some like built-in, tried and true questions that they could ask someone if they're not comfortable making conversation?
Yeah, before we go there though, I do want to mention one thing that what you said made me think about.
Okay.
You have to like go into the conversation realizing that it's about both people. So what will often happen is sometimes someone will say something and then you make it about you.
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, like that happened to me too. Or like you'll like one up like their struggle or something like that. Whenever the person is really more focused on being listened to instead of being related to. And so you want to just avoid doing that unless the conversation flows in that direction or you're trying to empathize with them. But you just want to be careful with that. And so when it comes to questions, I think about form, F-O-R-M. F stands for family. How's your family doing? F can also stand for from, like where are you from? And so if you're talking to somebody who's new to maybe the city or someone you've never met before, you can say like, you're originally from Georgia, or you're originally from Atlanta, originally from wherever. That's where what F stands for. O stands for occupation. So, how's work going? How long have you been in that position? How do you like your job? One of my questions that I often ask is, how long have you been in that job? They'll say maybe 2 years, 3 years, and I'll often say, do you see yourself there the next 2 or 3, years? And sometimes they'll say, yeah. And I'll say, oh, wow, you must like really love what you do. Most people don't say that. Or they'll be like, man, nah. And then it's like, okay, cool. Well, like, what is it that you do want to do? Like, what do you feel led to do? What do you feel like your purpose is? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
R stands for recreation. Like, what do you want to do for fun? N stands for a message. So if the conversation is going in a certain direction, like you can like end with the message you want them to leave with.
And an example of that would be like, hey, here's my number.
Yeah. Like, we should definitely catch up again soon. Don't be a stranger. Here, take my information. Do you have Instagram?
That is a great like dating technique too.
Oh, hey, brothers, I just put you on game.
Yeah.
Right there. So, so that's it, and that should flow pretty good for you. And eventually, the more you do it, the better you get.
Absolutely. Well, we hope that this helped you. And we hope that you don't just be hearers of our video, but you are doers of the video.
Doers of the word.
Yes. This is going to help you in your everyday life. It's going to add depth to your friendships, depth to your marriage, depth to all different types of relationships. And so we are so grateful that you spent this however many minutes with us.
Yeah, I don't know how long
it was a blast.
Yeah, it was a while.
And make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. This helps us get the word out about our channel, and more people are able to be blessed and helped by what we do whenever you do that with us.
Yeah, for sure. So we love y'all, and we'll see y'all later.